some of TPG's investments have considerable exposure to COVID-19. Cirque du Soleil comes to mind, so does Viking Cruises, Airbnb, for example. Tell me about how you have blocked and tackled, if you will.
So clearly, we've had something happen here that we've never had happen before. I mean, literally in certain cases, revenue has stopped inside of these companies, right? So the first thing that you're looking at is what are the near-term implications of that? And that generally revolves around liquidity, okay? Like how much liquidity does a company have? And what are the near-term measures to improve liquidity? So so as you know, that included furloughs, that included layoffs in certain situations. It included various forms of kind of shutting down the engines, if you will, in order to extend the runway of these companies.
Those are tough decisions.
Yeah, they are. I mean, they're very tough decisions because they involve people, and management teams are very loyal to their employees, and as are we. And so those are tough decisions. So, but the health of the company in the long run is obviously critical, right? Because those businesses employ people. Those businesses obviously have value within our portfolio and on behalf of our investors. So our priority and our focus has to be the survival of these businesses and the survival of these companies. So we have drawn down some revolvers in certain cases as a first step. A second step is what I mentioned before, which is how do you reduce the burn? Okay, yep. So we've taken a number of actions there. The third step is there more liquidity that we may have to provide into as investors? Do we have to provide additional liquidity to bridge the gap, if you will? And so we have done that in a couple of situations so far, and we may continue to do that. As you say, I think at some point you do have to evaluate whether or not, will something survive, period, because there may be more fundamental changes on the other side of this, right?
Are you there yet on that question? I mean, are we far enough along into this that you are having to make those really, difficult?
I think by and large, the answer is no, that we're not far enough along. In other words, I mean, like take the cruise business as an example, right? Viking Cruise Lines is a very important business of ours. Take the cruise business. I mean, you're in as good a position to evaluate that as I am. Okay. I mean, will people go back to cruising? The answer to that is probably yes, they will. Clearly, people are not going to go back to cruising the same way they were before in November, December. Okay. Now, sometime in 2021, I don't know. I think it depends on what happens with respect to things like treatments for the virus. It depends on whether or not there's ultimately a vaccine.
There are opportunities, and a number of private equity firms have availed themselves of these opportunities to go to the government, Health and Human Services, for example, to get loans for healthcare companies. TPG is a big player in healthcare, and that's a complicated decision, not because you don't want to support your companies, but because it's controversial. And I want to know I want to know the decision-making process, a little bit, a window into it, because it's important.
We've been working with all of our portfolio companies. We made a fundamental decision, very simple. Any company where we have a controlling stake at TPG, would not pursue the PPP loans. Why did we make that decision? Very simply, as it evolved, we felt it was very unclear, really, whether or not private equity controlled companies qualified, simply put. So we determined that private equity companies generally didn't qualify. There might be a few exceptions depending upon the interpretation. So we actually did not pursue those loans. Any companies that had taken a loan earlier on in the process, we returned the money. There are some companies, just to be complete about it, where we're not majority control, where we're a minority investor. And in most of those cases, we've spent time talking to the management teams. And in most of those cases, those companies also have decided not to pursue it. So, but to be very specific and clear, in any case where we're in a control position, we did not pursue PPP loans.